You are listening to the Starter Girls podcast with Jennifer Loading. Whether you are starting a project, starting a business, starting a brand, or starting a movement, we are here to talk about it. And I'm super excited to have Nancy Addison on the call today. Welcome, Nancy.
Hello, nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to do a real quick, give an intro to you so our audience can hear a little bit about you. And then we're going to jump right into this and get to talking because I've got a lot to talk to you about today. Nancy's delightful celebration of healthy food and her passion for sharing her wealth of knowledge is entertaining, enlightening, and oftentimes life-changing. In her presentations, counseling, radio shows, and books, Nancy shatters the stereotype about healthy eating and cuts through the myths and misinformation about health and nutrition. Nancy shares her favorite healthful tips for living the healthiest life possible. She believes living healthy is easier than you may think, and that you can prepare healthy foods and delicious drinks that are both nutritious. Healthy drinks that are both nutritious and delicious. I can't read my own notes here. She's the author of 6 books, including Diabetes in Your Diet and Raising Healthy Children. She holds several certifications and was awarded Winner for Excellence Healthcare by Dallas Awards Program in 2019. In addition to the many awards and recognition she has earned, she's also a member of the American Nutritionist Association. And she's a certified wildlife rehabilitator. I love this. I read that part and I'm so excited about that. You can also find Nancy at her radio show and podcast, Organic Healthy Lifestyle. So welcome to the show, Nancy. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
I had to read all that. I'm like, I get so excited. Like I said, I read your bio today and I was like, oh goodness, like I've got to take the highlights of this and put this all on here because we could be here for a while talking about all the great things that you've done, all the books, everything, the publications, everything. So what I want to do is I kind of want to jump in here and I want to talk about how did this all come about for you? Because I know, I shared my story with you and told you a little bit about how I evolved and came into what I'm doing. And I always feel like we all have these like little epiphany moments that sort of kind of lead us to where we're at. So how did this all come about for you?
Yeah, it's interesting as I've grown older in years. Your journey changes as you grow and as you have new experiences and learn new things and have different situations occur. And I think there are quite a few things that kind of evolved to get me where I am now. And as I look back on it, they say that what your passion is when you're like 6 or 7 or, in that age, like around 10, like that's like your soul's journey that maybe that's your gift God gave you. That is what you should be doing. And as I recall, in 3rd grade, there was a district-wide art contest and a district-wide writing contest that we all had to participate in at school. And I actually, for my entire grade and the entire district, won 1st place in the art contest and also 1st place in the writing contest. And I never really thought I was going to be a writer. I focused more on dance and on love of animals and also on art. And I got an art degree and taught drama and art for a while in schools. But I think one of the things that really brought me to where I am, what I'm doing now, is an overdose of penicillin when I was 2 years old by my pediatrician, which nearly killed me. And I ended up in the hospital getting multiple blood transfusions and bone marrow operations, whatever it was they were doing to me with no anesthetics. And I think that I spent most of my life trying to heal myself from what had been done to me. And these blood transfusions left me with other people's DNA in me. And apparently back in those times, they didn't purify blood or really even look at it very much. And so whatever these people had in them, I got at a tender age of 2.
Wow.
And just struggled with so many health situations until I was in my 30s and I had 2 small children at home, 1 and 2 years old. My dad died of cancer. And we had all been doing everything the medical professionals had told us to do. And everybody in my family was dying of heart disease or cancer. And when my dad died when my son was 1, I had that light bulb moment. And I was like, this is not working.
Right.
And so at that time, my own personal doctor died of cancer. And so I hired a new doctor and I told her, I said, I am not doing any more pharmaceuticals. I just want you to take my blood once a year to tell me how I'm doing. And I'm going to use nutrition as my medicine. And I started researching organics. I started my own organic garden. I was learning all about these GMOs, and I decided I was going to raise my children as healthy as I could. And I basically told my pediatrician the same thing. And my doctor, knew I was pre-diabetic. I had scoliosis. I had had terrible acute anemia since I was 2. I had acid reflux, headaches, you name it. I struggled with it. And I was also very much overweight from having 2 children back to back. So over the period of about a year and a half, 2 years, my doctor taking my blood and me just eating healthier and learning about nutrition and also becoming a vegetarian, more so because out of my love of animals, but also the fact that I had been studying that they were being fed all these hormones and antibiotics as well. And I didn't want to be a part of the inhumane treatment, but I also knew that the antibiotics and the hormones and all that were terrible for your health. So, various reasons. So I raised my kids vegetarian, but my doctor, saw me heal from all of these things I had struggled with really all my life. And I just started feeling better than I've ever felt in my life. And I had more energy. And she's the one who started sending me clients for nutritional counseling because she told me she got no nutrition at medical school and she didn't know anything about it. And so she started sending me, like doctors and nurses and people that worked in hospitals for nutritional counseling. And I was having such great success with it. And my pediatrician told me I had the healthiest children he had ever seen. So I knew I was on the right track. And I just kept on. And then as I got a divorce and I was in my 50s and trying to figure out what to do. And I'm not somebody who can work in a cubicle.
Sure.
And I thought, I have all this body of information on nutrition. And I had people asking me for all this information. So that's when I started writing my books. Went to Columbia to get a certification in health counseling so that I would have some credentials. And I started realizing I knew more than the teachers that were teaching us the information. And I kept doing this and I kept realizing I knew a lot more than a lot of the teachers did. And so I started putting this in my like How to Be a Healthy Vegetarian was my first book, which is now in its 2nd edition. And it's indexed, and a lot of doctors actually use that as their nutritional resource. But I had some medical doctors I had health counseled read my books and say, oh my goodness, this is absolutely awesome information for anyone, but including health professionals. And so I had a doctor ask me to teach the healing diet at Parker University in his classes for 5 years. And so I started speaking. And he recommended all his medical students to purchase my books and use them in their practice as their medical reference for nutrition. And it just kind of kept growing. And then I had a person on the board of a medical company in Dallas asked me to write the Diabetes in Your Diet book because I knew so much about that. So it just kept growing, and so now I have my 6 books, and I think a lot of people get some really good information out of that. And being a chef, they're all half cookbook, and so that it's very helpful for people who grew up on fast food who don't know how to cook, because I have a lot of information in there on how to make, for instance, beans and lentils, things like that, more digestible, because a lot of people turn away from a plant-based diet because they don't know how to prepare it properly, and they end up getting gas or indigestion, or they're not digesting their food properly. And because I'm a chef and a nutritionist and also an environmental kind of specialist, because I was married to an environmental trial lawyer for 23 years, and I have a lot of knowledge about environmental toxins, air quality, water quality. My books have a much broader scope to them than somebody who just went to nutrition school and learned nutrition, or just went to chef school and learned, how to be a cook. So it's just, it's a little more, I think, well-rounded. And anyway, I think that's how I got to
I love it. I was listening to all that. And it's interesting because I researched a little bit before you came on here, because I kind of had a little bit of background. But I think our stories are kind of parallel, a little bit different, but parallel in some ways. You know what I mean? And so you touched upon a couple things. The idea, you were talking about how you had the overdose of penicillin, and then you had all these health conditions. Interestingly enough, I was talking to somebody yesterday, very, very young, who had started having all these health problems come up. And immediately, I'm not a doctor, but I know I've had a lot of digestive issues over the years because of all the medications that I was on. And it was interesting, as I was listening to him, he came out later and said he had gotten diagnosed with Crohn's. And that was like immediately the thing that was coming to mind was Crohn's, because that was one of the things that I had been checked for. What I find so interesting is that you're talking about this is that, it's when two things I'll say. I can never figure out how people never associate or understand the connections between food and health. Like that always baffles me, how people don't, like, they know this, but don't quite make those connections. But the other thing that's so powerful is that when you have it's when we're in these moments where we're pushed against the wall and we say, medicine's not working, or what we're doing is not working. It's not working. Then we become very proactive in trying to heal ourselves. And that's when I think when the power comes in, because when you were talking about knowing this information, you're right. I've researched the stuff on the medical, a lot of them, they do not know anything about food. And I've gone around with doctors before and I've been like, you just stick to what you're doing. I've researched a lot of stuff here, I'm just going to let you stick with that, and I'll just go with what I will, And I tell my people all the time, talk to dietitians, talk to people who actually study this stuff. This is what they do, because they know a lot. And you have an incredible testimony coming out on the other side of that and having that, hey, this is where I was. I recognize this wasn't working. This is what I did. So I think it's impressive. I love it. And I'm glad that you shared that, because this is the first time I got to hear you actually tell all of that. And I just think it's a great story on a lot of levels. So a lot of good stuff there. And your books. I mean, and the other thing too, the fact that you have those recipes in there, that's huge too, because you're right. People coming into any kind of plan, even when I went into keto, the one thing was I didn't know what that was. I didn't even know how to adapt to that. And I will tell you, the recipes that were in the books that I bought were immensely helpful for me. So I love that you're doing that, because it makes it easy for your people coming in to go, okay, how do I adopt this lifestyle? She's got it all there for you. You don't even have to think, right? I love it. So many great things there. So many great things. Love it. Love it. So I had another question. I lost my train of thought, but I want to talk about your podcast and your show for a minute, because I got to be on there. So tell us a little bit, how long have you been doing that?
Thank you. I never in a million years thought I would have a radio show. And this gentleman who owned a radio station just kept at me for, actually, it was like 3 years, trying to talk me into it. He's like, your information is so important. You need to do this. You need to do this. And he finally talked me into it. And I have to admit, the first one I ever did was from Nicaragua.
How cool is that?
And it was really fun. So I've done them from all over the world, and I've learned so much doing it. But, pushing through that fear of presenting your information to the world is a biggie. And, I have now just gotten kind of inundated with a lot of various doctors who've been contacting me, wanting me to be on their shows. And I've learned so much from the people who've been on my shows, like Dr. Stephanie Seneff, a senior researcher at MIT. She was on my show this week, and she's been on my show quite a few times. And I've learned so much from her and her research on heart disease and cholesterol and vitamin D and glyphosate and just so many different things. And then she introduced me to another doctor, and they've gotten to be such good friends that now they send me their research information. They're like, I'm working on this now. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that goes with my research that I'm working on for this. And so, your information just keeps expanding. And I find that now that I'm being downloaded in almost 51,000 times a month in over 58 countries that, I've made friends with people all over the world who have contacted me and, told me that, they're trying to eat more vegetables. They're trying to, eat healthier. And it makes your heart so warm and comforting. I feel like I have a worldwide family now, and it has been such a blessing for my life. And I really love all the people that have become my friends. I consider them my organic, healthy life family.
That is so awesome. That's so well. And I think it's great that you've been able to take your story and have that impact and that reach. I think that's like, the ultimate thing when in life, when you get to be able to do something that has an impact on others. It's for the good of others. You're able to educate and inform people. And I'm with you. Talking about when you're starting something new where you're having to get out there and do talk about these things that because I shared that same story with you when I was kind of trying to figure out like where I wanted to go with the direction after I had came out of my health crisis. And it's like, what do I do with all this information and knowledge that I gathered? Like, where do I go with this? Because I feel like there are people that need to hear this stuff, but how do you go about doing that? So I applaud you for doing that. And incredible. I love it. I love it. So you know what? Tell us like you don't have to get into like some major recipes, but are there some things that you really like, I guess, foods that you really, really like to talk about that you're like really pro on? Obviously vegetables. I know that, right? But are there any like recipes or anything that you like to share that you're just like, are big things for you in your books or anything like that?
Well, it's interesting. Even though I studied at Cordon Bleu when I was in college in London, I'm pretty much a simple cook. I grew up in Texas, pretty down home. We had a farm, we had a garden. And so I really took a lot of my recipes back when I was changing my diet, and I started experimenting with healthier ingredients and found that it's much easier to switch out the unhealthy ingredients for the healthy ones, and it can still taste, I think, even better because it gives it that substance to it. Because if you were like me, you grew up on really white, refined, processed foods that the doctors were telling us were good for us.
Yes.
But like what you said, what we eat becomes our cells, our blood, and our tissue. How could it not directly impact your health? And so, as I learned through the years, I have found that sometimes the simplest things are the best. And I will take, a vegetable like cauliflower, and I will just chop it up into bite-sized pieces, coat it with some organic, pure coconut oil that's not changed in any way, and I will bake it with a little bit of Bolivian rose sea salt, which is one of my favorite salts that I use. And I will tell you, sometimes it's those simple foods that I find to be the most delicious. And, you can always change them up or add your own spices and things to them. But I am pretty much into the simple things. And I tell people to use my recipes as a baseline and a guide. And I love it when people start experimenting and saying, oh, but I have this in my refrigerator. I can do this. Nancy says I can experiment and use this as my base and add other things. And I think that's really fun. And I love hearing from my people around the world, like the lady in New Zealand who listens to my show every night when she's cooking dinner. And, I think about, who has what in their kitchen or wherever it is they live, like the guys in Saudi Arabia who are following me and becoming vegetarians. What do they have at the supermarket? And so, it really is a worldwide connection. And I think, a lot of times I put in there, pick something like this that's in your area and then use it this way or try to find the highest quality. And I really do focus on quality. And that's what I teach people, how to make the best decisions with whatever situation they have. And you're usually given a choice of something. So how do you decide, what's a GMO or what is got the herbicides on it that are going to harm my health? Or, how do I even have tips in there on growing your own sprouts and growing your own garden. And, how to pick mushrooms and things like that. So it's, how to make your own remedies, home remedies.
Yes, yes. No, I
So,
love this.
little things that I think are good for anybody, no matter where you are. And so it's kind of I don't know, I think of it as a guidebook.
Yeah, no, I love this.
Call my books their health Bibles.
Yeah, no, I love this. I love it. And you know what's so interesting is that, a lot of times, people think it's difficult to be healthy. But the thing is like once you figure out a few basic things, it's not really that hard any longer. You know what I mean? It's like just figuring out a few things. Like I even talk about now, even for me, like I can pretty much walk in to any restaurant and I know how to have a low carb meal. Like I know how to focus on making sure I don't get what I don't want on my plate of food. Whereas when I started, that would have been like, I didn't know anything. And I think back even when my oldest daughter, she's now 23, back when she was around, I want to say 14 or 15, we were experimenting with gluten-free. And that was kind of before we really knew about gluten-free. I mean, there just wasn't a whole lot of stuff on the market. And I just remember going into restaurants and we're like, we need you to bring us a salad, but leave the croutons off. And they'd still bring the croutons. Like, this is your gluten-free. I'm like, no, those are croutons. Those are bread. We would have to have these conversations. We're like, is that considered gluten? Yes. Pasta, bread, anything that's going to have wheat or durum or any of that kind of stuff is gluten, So I think that like once you do know a few simple things that, yes, and I love your little cauliflower. I love cauliflower, by the way. I can make rice with that stuff. I can do a lot of stuff with cauliflower. So a lot of cool things with that. So thank you for sharing all that. I think that's amazing. And I'm sure I'll have to check out some of your books. I'm sure they are amazing. You've got so many of them in there. So who would you say has been maybe your greatest influencers over the years? Anybody that comes to mind?
Yes. Linda Gray, the actress, dear friend of mine, she introduced me to Larry Hagman, and I was his chef and nutritionist when he had throat cancer and diabetes.
Wow.
And they became just the dearest friends of mine. And that was a meaningful time. I, was with him at least 6 months during probably some of the hardest times of his life. And one of the doctors that I trained in nutrition and has endorsed my books and writes the forwards to some of my books. He helped me in deciphering 20 of the medications they had Larry on because he had had a liver transplant because he had been an alcoholic. And so I had to deal with the fact that he was going mainstream medical, but he was also doing me. So while he was doing chemo and radiation and on all these medications, that 3 of them I found caused cancer and had also caused his diabetes. I learned a lot about pharmaceuticals. I learned a lot about dealing with people that are intensely sick and, how to work through that. And I've learned so much. And so I would say those 3 people, Dr. Gary Masad, Linda Gray, and Larry Hagman were 3 very, very important people in my life. And then also Dr. Michael W. Hall, who is my chiropractor, and also he's a neurologist. And he's world renowned for his neurology and chiropractic. He's trained many of the chiropractors here in the U.S., but he has also endorsed my books and sends me his people for nutrition counseling. And he's the one who also asked me to teach his classes for 5 years on the healing diet. And so he really taught me how to be a speaker and to be present and to also, not be afraid of putting out my information, because he really believes that they're some of the best nutrition books there are. And it's the same with Dr. Masad, who I just spoke with yesterday. And
Awesome.
And he worked with U.S. Olympic athletes for over 27 years and had sports clinics across America. So, those 4 people, I think, are deeply in my heart, and I'll always be grateful for that relationship with them.
That's so awesome.
And thank you for, heavenly divine creator, God, sending these people into my life like you.
I know. I think it's so interesting how, you go through life, and I always talk about this, like, you look at things, and I always say, you go through these things, and sometimes they're not pleasant at the time, but they lead you to bigger things. They put the right people in your life at the right time. And so your story is just incredible. I mean, I love it. I'm like, yeah, we know who we need to call. If I have somebody that's really stumped on their health, we know where we need to send them. You have just a really compelling story. And I love what you're doing. Like I said, I've gone through your website, kind of went through some of the things in there, and really like even when I was putting your bio together, I'm like, you just have so many incredible things in there. So I applaud you. I love it. And I love that you're getting the opportunity to share that with people, because I think that's so important, that you get to be able to, get your message out there, because there are people that need this. There are a lot of sick people. There are a lot of people that are struggling with chronic pain, chronic conditions. It's like, people, I think, even become so immune to them, they accept them as part of their life. I always talk about these labels. They just become part of who they are. I have this condition, I'm depressed, or I have this, or I have this. And it's like, no, you don't have to accept that. Like, you don't have to accept that life. You can if you want, but I choose not to. You don't have to. So I love that you get to share your message and get that out there. And
I think, unfortunately, Jennifer, I think a lot of medical professionals actually make them think that there's no way out, and that there is no ability to heal. And I just disagree with that. And I think that's wrong to put that in people's minds.
I would agree with
you. I
you.
think the body is amazing. And if you give it the right tools, it can do miraculous things.
I feel like I've said that. I feel like I've said that. The body is miraculous. It can do great things. You just got to give it the right tools. I'm sure I've told somebody that before. It is. And I agree with you 100% on that. I agree with you. That's why I said I've had many conversations with doctors where I've just had to stop the conversation. I don't even have enough certifications to go there, but I just have researched enough to know that medicine's not the answer to everything. It isn't. And I talk about Band-Aids. I mean, if you've got somebody that's going in there, and I will say a disclaimer, like I said, we're not doctors here, but you have somebody dying from heart disease and they go in the hospital, sure, take care of the situation while they're in there. But when they get out, figure out what you need to do to stay out of the hospital. Like, fix your health so that you're not back in there, because those same things that are killing you of heart disease are also robbing you of everything else, all the other chronic pain and all the other stuff that you're dealing with. So 100%. I agree with you on that. That's why I love what you're doing. So fun. All right. So I want to ask some fun questions. And this is always my rapid fire. These are easy, but they're super fun. So when you're not educating people and sharing all your wealth of knowledge, what else do you like to do for fun?
I love horseback riding. I grew up riding in the rodeo.
Oh, fun.
And I love rehabbing animals. And I volunteer with some animal rescue groups, and I'm certified in international wildlife rehabbing, and just very passionate about also dance. I was in a dance company in London in college, and I still love to get that exercise of dance, because it keeps your core strong, it keeps you happy. I love the music, and it's a wonderful way to add that joy and that exercise to your life in a really good way. And I love the camaraderie. And so
that's awesome. I love it.
Some of my favorite things.
Yeah, I love that. So are you a morning or a night person?
I'm a morning person.
I figured that. Yeah, I figured that. You're probably up ready to go in the morning. I'm the same way too. So I can absolutely relate to that. I'm like up ready to go in the morning. But I don't know why I even asked that question, because I kind of figured you probably were. You're like way too organized and you got your stuff together. You have to be. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be. So I love it. So are you a preference, cat or dog person?
I'm every animal lover.
You like them all equally, huh? I like them all equally too.
Cats, though, but I have no. I absolutely love horses. I love being around horses, but I have to admit, I rehabbed a squirrel in Costa Rica last year and fell in love with Willie the squirrel. So
you sound like our house. I was just talking about this today, and you're going to laugh about this because my daughter left for college, my middle one. Of course, she's back home because of all this, Corona thing. So last July, before she left for college, we found this little bird in a parking lot at a barbecue restaurant. No kidding. My kids loaded this bird home. They took it, wrapped it up in a paper towel, took it home, put it in a box, put a heating pad under. I had to drive 45 minutes to the other side of Dallas to take it to a rehabilitation center. Like, this is my
Rogers
family.
Wildlife.
Yes, yes.
I love Rogers Wildlife. That is the best.
Yes, we have done like so many crazy things like this. I'm like, I tell people all the time, that's why I love to ask this question. I know who my animal people are, but somehow they always show up on my porch. Like we have a leash law in my neighborhood, and somehow these animals just make their way to my house. Like, I'm not kidding you. Rabbits, birds, like all of them make their way there. So I love it. You knew the place I was talking about. That's even funnier.
Oh, they've helped me rescue so many ducks and hawks and things in Dallas that have like fishing line wrapped around their neck and things. We've waded into big rivers and lakes, and they are fantastic. They almost closed about a year or two ago because of lack of funds. So I try to do fundraisers for them when I can, and they're an incredibly talented group of people.
Yeah. We went out there. We took a tour around there. My kids have worked in shelters, different places and stuff. So yeah, we just rescued a dog from a shelter on Monday. So I think we were talking about this. Pretty much all of our pets have been rescues. I think we maybe purchased one rabbit from a store, but all of them have been rescues from a shelter. So I'm all about, rescuing animals. And I always say the best breeds are the ones in need, right? So a lot of them out there. So awesome.
You rescued them, and I believe there's a different relationship there. And animals read your energy, and they can tell your intentions.
Yeah.
So they read the pictures in your mind, and so that's really important.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that too. I always talk about that because our one of our pets just passed last week, and I was talking about that, how we rescued him, and he was a former bait dog, and we rehabilitated him. We put him through behavior school. I mean, I'm talking, this dog was like, it was awful. And he just passed. And I was thinking about how much he had evolved over the 5.5 years that we had him. He'd actually become a very loyal companion and was very, like, I could just say to this dog, leave it. That's where he was at, And so I do agree with you on that. I do think they read energy. And I always say I'm the same way. I have that keen sense. I know quickly when I like people and when I don't. I think the dogs are the same way. So I'm with you on it 100%. So getting back to food really quick, what is your favorite food? What's your favorite?
Oh, you're going to think this is so silly, but I love steamed broccoli.
I like broccoli too.
I love steamed broccoli with just, a little bit of either butter or hollandaise sauce or something like that on it. And I have a vegetarian hollandaise sauce I make.
That's awesome.
And, that's just one of my special things I like.
Yeah, that's okay. You can like whatever you want, right? It's your thing. All right, Nancy, this has been so awesome. So if our listeners wanted to learn a little bit more about your podcast and you and what you've got going on, where do you want them to come find you at?
Well, my website's organichealthylife.com. And I have a lot of free information there. And truly, this is just my sole mission, I believe, of helping people with health and nutrition and lifestyle. I think a lot of things is simply lifestyle changes that, if you can tweak a few things that don't even cost you anything in your life, I sometimes see amazing changes in people's health in a very short period of time. And so if they just go to organichealthylife.com, they can see my newsletter sign up. My iHeartRadio is in the top banner of my website, and a lot of free information on my blog and in the TV videos that I have on my YouTube channel.
Awesome. We'll be sure when we get this put together too, we'll get all your contact information in there so we can direct it back your direction. But yes, definitely we want people to check it out, check your books out, check out the podcast, your radio show, everything that you've got going on, because I think you're doing great things. So you're helping change people. I always say getting people healthy, one little person at a time, right? Somebody hears your message. That's all that matters, right? That's what I say every day. So this has been awesome, Nancy. And thank you so much for being on our show. I want to tell our listeners real quick, if you enjoy our podcast, podcast, please be sure you give us a rating both on iTunes and Facebook, because of course we can't do this without you, and hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And with that, I'm going to wrap up with our mantra. So it's a great day to be brave. You might as well start now. You have the power to change your circumstances any day you decide. Let today be that day. Rise up, be amazing, be you, do you. All right, you guys take care, be safe, and be kind to one another. We'll see you next time.